In a town of 2,000 people, some secrets are impossible to keep. But in a small medical clinic in Millbrook, Iowa, one doctor held a secret that could destroy the woman he was starting to care about, or save her from a past she couldn't escape. This is a story about trust when the truth feels impossible to tell. If stories about second chances and finding courage resonate with you, consider subscribing. It truly helps keep these stories coming. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from today? It started on a Tuesday morning in September, when Sarah Brennan walked into Dr. Hartley's clinic and everything changed. The waiting room of Millbrook Family Medicine smelled like coffee and old magazines. Sarah Brennan sat in the corner chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap, watching dust motes drift through the morning sunlight. She'd taught second grade at Millbrook Elementary for 8 years, and in that time, she'd sat in this exact waiting room maybe twice. She wasn't the type to complain about feeling under the weather. But 3 weeks of exhaustion and nausea that arrived like clockwork every morning had finally driven her here. Sarah? The nurse, Carol Henderson, appeared in the doorway with a warm smile. Carol's daughter had been in Sarah's class 2 years ago. Dr. Hartley will see you now. Sarah followed her down the narrow hallway, past examination rooms with their sterile white walls and anatomical posters. Owen Hartley had returned to Millbrook 6 months ago, taking over the practice from old Dr. Morrison, who'd finally retired. Sarah had heard the stories. Hometown boy makes good in Chicago, then surprises everyone by coming back. She'd seen him around town, tall and quiet with kind eyes. But they'd never really spoken beyond polite hellos at the grocery store. He stood when she entered the examination room, extending his hand. "Mrs. Brennan, good to finally meet you properly." His handshake was firm, professional, but his smile reached his eyes in a way that put her at ease. "Please, call me Sarah." She settled onto the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath her. "I'm sorry to bother you with something probably silly. If it brought you here, it's not silly." Owen pulled up a rolling stool, his attention fully on her. "Tell me what's been going on." She described the symptoms, the bone-deep fatigue that made getting through a school day feel like running a marathon, the nausea that hit her the moment she woke up, the way certain smells suddenly made her stomach turn. "I thought maybe it was stress. The anniversary of my husband's passing was last month, and sometimes grief catches up with you in strange ways." Something flickered across Owen's face. Sympathy, understanding. "I heard about your husband. I'm very sorry for your loss." He made notes on his tablet. "How long has it been?" 14 months. The number came automatically. 14 months since Daniel's tractor had rolled on that hill, since her world had collapsed into before and after. "I thought I was doing better, but maybe my body's telling me otherwise." Owen asked more questions. Her cycle, her sleep patterns, her appetite. His manner was gentle but thorough, and Sarah found herself relaxing despite her nerves. Finally, he said, "I'd like to run some blood work, just to rule out a few things. Thyroid issues can cause fatigue, and we should check your iron levels. Would that be all right?" 20 minutes later, Sarah sat in Owen's office while he reviewed the results on his computer screen. She watched his expression shift. Confusion, then surprise, then something she couldn't quite read. He turned to face her, and she saw him choose his words carefully. "Sarah, your symptoms aren't from grief or stress." He paused. "You're pregnant, about 8 weeks along." The world tilted. Sarah heard the words, understood them individually, but together they made no sense. That's not possible. The test is very accurate. I ran it twice to be certain. Her hands had gone numb. 8 weeks. 2 months. She counted backward in her mind, and the room grew smaller, the walls pressing in. Her husband had been gone for over a year. There was only one possibility. One night that she'd tried so hard not to think about. Sarah? Owen's voice was gentle. Is there something you need to tell me? She looked up at him, and the concern in his eyes, genuine, not judgmental, broke something loose inside her. This will ruin everything, she whispered. Owen moved his chair closer, his voice low. Whatever this is, you're not alone in it. That's what I'm here for. She wanted to believe him, but she'd lived in Millbrook her entire life. She knew how fast news traveled, how easily reputations crumbled. She was Daniel's widow, the sweet teacher who read stories to children and volunteered at church functions. She wasn't supposed to be a woman who'd spent one reckless night with a stranger and was now carrying the consequences. You're the only one who can ever know about this, Sarah said, meeting his eyes with desperate intensity. Please. Owen held her gaze for a long moment. She could see him weighing his obligations, as a doctor, as a member of this community, as a man who barely knew her, but was being asked to carry the weight of her secret. Finally, he nodded slowly. Doctor-patient confidentiality. Whatever you tell me stays between us. Sarah closed her eyes, relief and fear warring inside her. She'd bought herself time, but she had no idea what to do with it. The afternoon sun slanted through the Venetian blinds in Owen's office, casting stripes of gold across his desk. School had dismissed an hour ago, and Sarah had driven straight back to the clinic. Owen had left the side door unlocked for her, as promised. She'd slipped inside like a thief, grateful that Carol had already gone home for the day. Owen sat across from her now, his tie loosened, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. But his attention never wavered from her face. 3 months ago, Sarah began, her voice barely above a whisper. My sister got married in Des Moines. The reception was at this beautiful hotel downtown. I was happy for Emma, truly. But being there, watching her start her life with someone, it made me realize how stuck I felt. Like I was frozen in place while everyone else kept moving forward. She twisted her wedding ring, a habit she couldn't break. There was a man at the hotel bar. Not a wedding guest, just someone passing through. We started talking. He was kind, funny. He listened like I was actually interesting, not just poor Sarah the widow. We talked for hours. She paused, shame heating her cheeks. And then, we didn't just talk. Owen said nothing, waiting. I don't even know his last name. He said he was traveling for work, that he'd be gone by morning. And he was. I went back to my room at 3 a.m, and when I woke up, he was already checked out. Sarah looked up at Owen. It was the first time since Daniel died that I felt alive. Even for just one night. Even if it was with a stranger. You don't have to justify anything to me, Owen said quietly. Don't I? Tears burned her eyes. This town still sees me as Daniel's widow. Perfect, grieving, devoted. Dorothy, Daniel's mother, she watches me like a hawk, making sure I'm honoring his memory properly. The school where I teach is affiliated with the church. If anyone finds out I'm pregnant, that I was with someone, her voice cracked, they'll tear me apart. They'll say I dishonored Daniel, that I'm not fit to teach their children. I could lose everything. Owen leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. What do you want to do? I don't know. The admission felt like defeat. I can't keep this hidden forever. In a few weeks, it'll start to show. But I can't face the judgment, the gossip. I can't watch everyone I know look at me differently. You're stronger than you think, Owen said, and something in his tone made her look up. I've seen you around town. The way your students light up when they see you at the market. The way you helped old Mrs. Patterson load her groceries last month in the rain. You're not defined by one night or one choice. You don't know me, Sarah said, but without heat. No, Owen agreed. But I'd like to, and I meant what I said. You're not alone in this. He stood, moving to the window. I came back to Millbrook because I got tired of the city, of people treating medicine like a business. I wanted to actually help people again. So let me help you. Sarah stood too, grabbing her purse. You've already done more than I had any right to ask. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Why did you really come back? To a town where everyone knows your business, where you can't escape your past? Owen turned, and for a moment she saw something vulnerable in his expression. Maybe I needed to stop running from my past. He smiled slightly. Secrets like this don't stay buried in towns like ours, Sarah. Eventually, you'll have to face it. When that time comes, I'll be here. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and slipped out into the fading daylight. As she drove home, his words echoed in her mind. Eventually, you'll have to face it. But not today. Today, the secret was still safe. Sunday dinner at the Brennan family farm was a tradition that predated Sarah's marriage. Dorothy Brennan had raised 4 children in the white farmhouse with its wraparound porch and creaking floorboards. And even after they'd all moved away, she insisted on gathering the family together once a week. Since Daniel's death, Sarah had become the focus of Dorothy's protective attention, a blessing and a burden in equal measure. Sarah pulled her car up the gravel driveway, parking beside her brother-in-law's truck. Through the kitchen windows, she could see figures moving, hear the faint sound of laughter. She gripped the steering wheel, taking 3 slow breaths. You can do this. Just a few hours. Keep your hands on your stomach and nobody will notice. Sarah. Dorothy met her at the door, pulling her into a lavender-scented hug. You're late. I was starting to worry. Sorry. Stopped to get gas. The lie came easily, too easily. The house smelled like pot roast and fresh bread. Daniel's sister Linda was setting the table, her twins racing circles around the dining room. Daniel's brother Marcus stood by the stove, stealing bites of mashed potatoes while Dorothy swatted his hand away. For a moment, the normalcy of it all made Sarah's chest ache with longing for simpler days. You look different, Dorothy said, studying Sarah's face as she hung up her coat. There's color in your cheeks. You're glowing. Sarah's stomach dropped. Just the cold air outside. No, it's more than that. Dorothy smiled, but her eyes were sharp. You look like you're finally coming back to life. It's good to see. They settled around the table, the conversation flowing easily between updates on the twins' school year and Marcus's complaints about grain prices. Sarah pushed food around her plate, forcing herself to take small bites, even though the smell of beef made her stomach turn. She'd made it through worse. She could make it through this. Sarah should start dating again, Linda said suddenly, reaching for the rolls. It's been over a year. Daniel would want you to be happy. The table went quiet. Sarah felt everyone's eyes on her. I'm fine, she managed. I'm not ready for that. You're 32, Linda pressed. You can't mourn forever. There are nice men in town. That new doctor, for instance. What's his name? Owen Hartley. He came back from Chicago, still single. Linda, Dorothy's voice carried a warning. Let Sarah move at her own pace. But Linda wasn't finished. I'm just saying, we'd all want to know if you were seeing someone, Sarah. This family doesn't like surprises. We take care of our own, but we expect honesty. Sarah set down her fork carefully. I'm not seeing anyone. Good. Dorothy reached over and patted her hand. When you're ready, you'll tell us. We just want what's best for you, dear. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Sarah excused herself as soon as politely possible, citing papers to grade. As she drove home along the dark country roads, a wave of nausea hit her so suddenly she had to pull onto the shoulder. She barely got the door open before she was sick on the roadside grass. Headlights appeared behind her. A truck slowed, then stopped. Sarah's heart hammered as footsteps approached. Then Owen's voice cut through the darkness. Sarah, are you all right? She looked up at him, silhouetted against his truck's headlights, and something inside her broke. The stress of dinner, of maintaining the pretense, of carrying this secret alone, it all crashed over her at once. She sat back against her car tire and started to cry. Owen crouched beside her without a word. He pulled a bottle of water from his truck, helped her rinse her mouth, then simply sat with her on the cold ground while she cried. He didn't offer empty reassurances or tell her it would all be okay. He just stayed. Dorothy saw us together at the clinic, Sarah finally said, wiping her eyes. Tonight at dinner, Linda made comments about me dating, about the family deserving to know. They're watching me. They're all watching me. Then we'll be careful, Owen said quietly. We? Sarah looked at him. There is no we. You're my doctor, that's all. Owen met her eyes, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Is that really all you want it to be? She couldn't answer, didn't know how to answer. So she let him help her to her feet, let him follow her home to make sure she got there safely, and tried not to think about how the word we had sounded like a lifeline in the darkness. 2 weeks passed like holding her breath underwater. Sarah moved through her days in a careful ballet of normalcy, teaching her second graders, grading papers, attending church on Sunday. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Her jeans grew tighter. Morning sickness became an unwelcome companion. And Owen Hartley had somehow become the only person she could talk to. They'd fallen into a pattern of meeting after hours at his clinic for checkups. And somehow those appointments always stretched longer than necessary. Medical discussions would drift into conversations about books, about the suffocating comfort of small towns, about the people they'd been before loss had reshaped them. Owen told her about his engagement in Chicago. A woman named Catherine who'd given him an ultimatum between her and Millbrook. Sarah told him about marrying Daniel at 23, how safe he'd made her feel, how she'd never really tested her wings before he died. On a crisp October afternoon, they met at Riverside Park instead of the clinic. The maples blazed orange and gold, and the creek burbled over smooth stones. It was risky being seen together in public. But Sarah was tired of hiding in examination rooms. She needed air, needed to feel like something other than a problem to be managed. Owen brought coffee for himself and ginger tea for her. They sat on a weathered bench overlooking the water, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. 12 weeks now, Owen said, his voice quiet. The first trimester is almost over. Statistically, that's good news. And practically? Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm cup. In a few weeks, I won't be able to hide this with loose sweaters. Have you thought about what you'll say when people start asking? Sarah watched leaves spiral down from the trees. Every night. But I can't find words that won't destroy me. She turned to him. Why are you doing this? Really? You barely know me, and I've made you complicit in something that could damage your reputation too. Owen was quiet for a long moment. My father died when I was 16. Heart attack, sudden. For years afterward, my mother tried to handle everything alone, the farm, the bills, her grief. She wouldn't accept help because she thought needing people made her weak. He met Sarah's eyes. By the time she finally broke down and asked for support, she'd nearly lost everything. I learned then that strength isn't doing it alone. It's knowing when to let people in. So, I'm a lesson you learned from your mother? Sarah asked, but she was smiling slightly. No. Owen's voice dropped. You're someone I can't stop thinking about. Someone I want to know better, secrets and all. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither had spoken aloud. Sarah felt her heart hammering. Before she could respond, she heard her name called from across the park. Dorothy Brennan walked toward them with 3 other women from her church group, their expressions ranging from curious to knowing. Sarah's stomach dropped. She stood quickly, nearly spilling her tea. Dorothy? Mrs. Patterson. Hello? Dorothy's eyes moved from Sarah to Owen, taking in the scene, the intimate bench, the proximity, the way they'd pulled apart like teenagers caught kissing. Dr. Hartley, I didn't know you and Sarah were acquainted. Small town, Owen said easily, standing. I was just telling Sarah about the autumn hiking trails. Thought she might enjoy getting out of the house. How thoughtful. Dorothy's tone suggested she didn't believe a word. Sarah, dear, I've been meaning to call you. We should have lunch this week. It wasn't a suggestion. Sarah nodded, feeling the trap closing. As Dorothy and her friends continued their walk, Sarah caught the backward glances, the way their heads bent together in immediate conversation. By dinner time, half the town would know she'd been seen with Owen Hartley looking quite cozy in the park. I'm sorry, Owen said quietly. I shouldn't have suggested meeting here. No. Sarah gathered her things, her hands shaking slightly. You were right before. Secrets don't stay buried. I just wish I had more time. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Millbrook Elementary to find Principal Holloway waiting by her classroom door. Mrs. Holloway was a dignified woman in her 60s who'd taught at the school for 30 years before becoming principal. She wore sensible shoes and had kind eyes, but she also served on the church board, and her position required her to care about appearances. Sarah, do you have a moment? Let's talk in my office before the children arrive. Sarah's throat tightened. She followed Mrs. Holloway down the hallway, past cheerful bulletin boards covered in student artwork. The office smelled like coffee and old paper. Mrs. Holloway closed the door gently and gestured to a chair. I'll be direct because I respect you too much for games. Dorothy Brennan called me last night. She's concerned about you. Concerned? Sarah kept her voice level. She mentioned seeing you with Dr. Hartley yesterday. Looking, in her words, quite close. Mrs. Holloway folded her hands on her desk. Sarah, you're a wonderful teacher. The children adore you, and you've been an asset to this school. But we are affiliated with the church, and we represent certain values to the community. I'm not doing anything wrong, Sarah said quietly. I'm not suggesting you are. But if you're entering into a relationship, we'd appreciate transparency. The community talks, Sarah. You know how it is. People still see you as Daniel's widow. And there are expectations about how you should grieve, how you should behave. Mrs. Holloway's expression softened. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's reality. Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She understood perfectly. Be careful. Don't give them reasons to question you. Remember who you're supposed to be. Take the day to think, Mrs. Holloway said. If there's anything you need to tell me about your personal life, about your plans, my door is always open. But Sarah, the longer people have to speculate, the worse the stories become. Sarah made it through morning lessons on autopilot. Her second graders practiced their spelling words, played a math game with counting bears, listened to her read a chapter from their current book. She smiled and encouraged and praised, all while feeling like she was watching herself from a distance. At lunch, she sat alone in her classroom, too nauseous to face the teacher's lounge. She was nibbling crackers when a wave of dizziness hit her so hard she had to grip the edge of her desk. The room tilted. She tried to stand, to sit back down, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The next thing she knew, she was on the floor, and someone was calling her name. Ms. Rodriguez from the classroom next door knelt beside her, looking frightened. "Sarah, can you hear me? I'm calling 911. "No." Sarah struggled to sit up. "No, I'm fine. Just stood up too fast." But Ms. Rodriguez's hand was already on her phone, and other teachers were crowding the doorway. Sarah saw their concerned faces, heard their worried murmurs, and caught the whispered speculation that made her blood run cold. "Do you think she's sick? She has been looking pale lately. My sister fainted like that when she was pregnant." Sarah closed her eyes. The secret she'd been guarding so carefully was unraveling, thread by thread, and she couldn't stop it. Owen's clinic was quiet when Sarah burst through the door that evening. She'd made it through the rest of the school day by insisting she'd simply skipped breakfast, that she was fine, that everyone should stop fussing. But the damage was done. The whispers had started, the speculation fueled by Dorothy's observations and Sarah's fainting spell. Carol had already left for the day. Sarah found Owen in his office, reviewing patient files. He looked up, saw her face, and immediately stood. What happened? Sarah paced his small office like a caged animal. "It's falling apart, all of it. I nearly fainted at school today, and now people are whispering. They're putting it together, the weight gain, the nausea, being seen with you. Mrs. Holloway basically told me to come clean about my personal life before the rumors get worse." She stopped, pressing her hands to her face. "I'm 12 weeks pregnant, Owen. In another month, maybe less, there won't be any hiding it. Everyone will know. Then maybe it's time to stop hiding." Sarah stared at him. "What?" Owen moved around the desk, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about this. About you, about the situation." He took a breath. "We could tell people the baby is mine, that we've been seeing each other quietly for a few months, that it's serious between us. It would give the pregnancy legitimacy, protect your reputation." "Are you insane?" Sarah's voice rose. "You're talking about lying to everyone, about claiming a child that isn't yours? I'm talking about giving you a way out that doesn't destroy you." Owen's voice was firm. "This town will judge you mercilessly if you're an unwed mother with no father in the picture. But if we're together, if we present a united front, I won't trap you." Sarah cut him off, her voice shaking. "I won't force you into some fake relationship because I made a mistake. That's not fair to you, Owen. You deserve someone who... What if it wouldn't be fake for me?" The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her heart stop, restart. Owen stepped closer. "I'm not proposing some noble sacrifice. I'm telling you that over these past few weeks, getting to know you, seeing your strength and your kindness, Sarah, You're not a problem I'm trying to solve. You're someone I care about. Someone I could see a future with, baby and all. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The offer was everything she needed and nothing she deserved. You don't know what you're saying. The reality of this. Raising someone else's child, dealing with the gossip, being tied to my mess. Let me decide what I can handle. No. Sarah grabbed her purse, needing to move, to escape before she did something foolish like say yes. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. I'll figure something out. The clinic door burst open. They both turned to see Dorothy Brennan striding down the hallway, her face set in determined lines. She reached the office doorway and stopped, taking in the scene. Sarah's tears, Owen's protective stance, the intimacy of the moment. I knew it, Dorothy said, her voice tight with emotion. I knew something was going on. Sarah, we need to talk. Now. Dorothy Brennan stood in the doorway of Owen's office like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. Her gray hair was pulled back in its usual neat bun, but strands had escaped, giving her an uncharacteristically disheveled appearance. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her purse. How long? Dorothy's voice cracked. How long have you been lying to me? Sarah felt the floor shift beneath her feet. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading since that morning in September, when 2 lines had appeared on a test and changed everything. She could lie, deflect, buy herself more time. But looking at Dorothy's face, hurt mixed with anger, mixed with something that looked almost like fear, Sarah found she couldn't do it anymore. I'm pregnant, Sarah said quietly. About 12 weeks. Dorothy's face went white. She reached for the doorframe to steady herself, and Owen immediately moved to help her, but she waved him off. Daniel's been gone for 14 months. I know. So this baby? Dorothy's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Who? Sarah felt Owen shift beside her, ready to step in, to offer the lie that would save her. She touched his arm, stopping him. If she was going to do this, she needed to do it herself. Someone I met at Emma's wedding. It was one night. He's gone. I don't expect to ever see him again. The words landed like stones in water. Dorothy sank into the chair by Owen's desk, her face crumbling. One night. With a stranger. She looked up at Sarah with eyes that held more pain than judgment. Daniel's barely been gone a year. How could you? I'm not asking you to understand, Sarah said, forcing herself to meet Dorothy's gaze. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But it happened. Now I have to deal with it. Deal with it. Dorothy repeated the words as if they were foreign. You're carrying a child, Sarah, a life, and you've been hiding it, lying to everyone who cares about you. Her eyes shifted to Owen. And you've been helping her? I'm her doctor, Owen said evenly. She needed medical care and someone she could trust. Trust. Dorothy stood abruptly. That word keeps coming up, but I don't see much trust in any of this. I see secrets. I see lies. I see my son's widow. Her voice broke. I see someone I thought I knew becoming a stranger. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I'm still the same person. I made a choice that I have to live with. I'm sorry it hurts you. But Dorothy, I can't spend the rest of my life being only Daniel's widow. He's gone. And I'm still here. The words hung heavy in the fluorescent-lit office. Dorothy stared at Sarah for a long moment, and Sarah saw the exact instant when hurt turned to something harder, more final. The farm, Dorothy said quietly. The house you're living in. It's still Brennan family property, held in trust. We allowed you to stay there because you were Daniel's wife, because we thought. She stopped, shook her head. The family will need to discuss whether that arrangement should continue. Sarah felt the ground drop away. You're evicting me? I'm saying the family needs to talk. About everything. Dorothy moved toward the door, then paused. You should know. The church board meets tomorrow night. Mrs. Holloway has already called me. They'll want to discuss your position at the school. Dorothy, please. But Dorothy was already gone, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. The clinic door slammed, and then there was only silence. Owen reached for Sarah, but she stepped back, shaking her head. Don't comfort me. This is exactly what I knew would happen. Sarah, I need to go. She grabbed her purse with trembling hands. I need to think. She drove home through darkness that seemed to press against her windshield. The farmhouse looked smaller than usual when she pulled into the driveway, its white paint ghostly in the moonlight. Inside, it smelled like the lemon cleaner she'd used that morning, back when her biggest worry had been getting through the school day without getting sick. Sarah moved through rooms that had never quite felt like hers. Dorothy's furniture, Daniel's grandmother's dishes, family photos on every wall reminding her she'd always been a guest in someone else's history. She stood in what had been Daniel's childhood bedroom, the one they'd shared during their marriage, and tried to imagine packing it all up, leaving, starting over with nothing but a car, some clothes, and a baby she hadn't planned for. The phone rang at 10 o'clock. Owen's name lit up the screen. Sarah stared at it through 3 rings before answering. I'm coming over, he said without preamble. Don't argue. Owen, I'm already in my truck. He arrived 15 minutes later, and Sarah let him in because she was too tired to fight. They sat at her kitchen table, Dorothy's kitchen table, while rain began to patter against the windows. Owen set a folder between them. I did some research. Tenant rights in Iowa. Even if the house is family property, they can't just evict you without proper notice. You have at least 30 days, probably more. 30 days to find a new place, a new job, a new life. Sarah laughed, but it came out broken. I thought I was protecting myself by keeping this secret, but I've just been delaying the inevitable, and now it's so much worse. Now I've dragged you into it too. Stop. Owen's voice was firm. Stop apologizing for needing help. Stop acting like you're some burden everyone has to carry. He leaned forward. I meant what I said earlier, all of it. You want to claim another man's baby and tie yourself to the town pariah? That's not noble, Owen. That's insane. Maybe, or maybe I'm just tired of running from things that matter. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. I came back to Millbrook because I was tired of living a life that looked good on paper but felt empty. My engagement in Chicago, Catherine wanted a successful husband with the right connections, the right address. She never wanted me. Just the version of me that fit her plans. Sarah turned her hand over, letting their fingers intertwine. And you think I'm different? Owen, you barely know me. I know you're a teacher who stays late to help struggling students. I know you check on Mrs. Patterson even though she's not related to you. I know you're terrified and trying to be brave anyway. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I know that when I'm with you, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. This is a terrible idea. Probably. Everyone will judge us. Your practice could suffer. People will say you're foolish for taking on someone else's mess. Let them. Owen squeezed her hand. Move in with me. Let me be there for you in this baby. not because you need me to, but because I want to, because I think we could build something real here if you're willing to try. Sarah looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd appeared in her life at exactly the wrong moment and somehow become exactly what she needed. She thought about saying no, about protecting him from the fallout that was coming. But she was so tired of being strong alone, of carrying everything by herself. "Okay," she whispered. Owen's eyes widened. "Okay?" "Yes." "But Owen," she met his gaze, "if this gets too hard, if you change your mind, I need you to promise you'll be honest with me. Don't stay out of obligation." "I won't." He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "But Sarah, I'm not going to change my mind." They stood in the quiet kitchen, rain drumming on the roof, and for the first time in months, Sarah felt like she could breathe. The storm was coming. She knew that. But at least she wouldn't face it alone. The knock on her door came at 7 the next morning. Sarah, still in her robe and barely awake, found a courier holding an envelope. Official. Legal. She signed for it with shaking hands and opened it before the man's truck had even left her driveway. Notice to vacate. 30 days. The Brennan family attorney's signature at the bottom, cold and impersonal. She had until November 15th to leave the only home she'd known as a married woman. Sarah sank onto her porch steps, the morning air cold against her skin. She should feel devastated. Instead, she felt strangely relieved. The waiting was over. The consequences were real now, tangible. She could stop bracing for impact and start figuring out how to survive it. Her phone buzzed. "Owen, I'm picking you up in an hour. We need to talk." Sarah showered and dressed carefully, choosing a loose sweater that hid her growing stomach. When Owen arrived, his expression was grim. He held up his own phone, showing her a text message chain. It was from the church board. They were requesting his presence at an emergency meeting that evening to discuss concerns about professional conduct and community standards. "They're going after both of us," Sarah said quietly. "Let them." Owen pocketed his phone. "But we're going to face them together. And Sarah, we're going to tell the truth, our truth, the one we choose." The Millbrook Community Church occupied a century-old building on Main Street, its white steeple visible from anywhere in town. That evening, Sarah and Owen walked up its front steps side by side, and Sarah felt every eye in the parking lot tracking their movement. Inside, the church board had assembled in the community room, 8 people sitting behind a long table like a tribunal. Mrs. Holloway was there, looking uncomfortable. Dorothy sat at one end, her face carefully blank. The church pastor, Reverend Matthews, occupied the center seat. Sarah and Owen sat in chairs facing them, and Sarah felt like she was on trial. In a way, she was. Reverend Matthews cleared his throat. "Thank you both for coming. We'll be direct. Concerns have been raised about Sarah's conduct and her fitness to continue teaching at our affiliated school. There have also been questions about Dr. Hartley's professional boundaries. We'd like to give you both an opportunity to address these concerns." Sarah felt Owen's hand find hers under the table. She squeezed it, drawing strength, and then stood. Her legs shook, but her voice came out steady. "I'm pregnant, about 13 weeks along. The father isn't in my life, and he won't be. Yes, this happened while I was still considered a widow. Yes, I made choices that some of you will judge." She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. "I'm not going to apologize for being human, for having one night where I felt alive again after months of grief, for making a choice that was mine alone to make. Dorothy's face remained impassive, but Sarah saw her hands clench on the table. "I'm a good teacher," Sarah continued. "My students learn and grow in my classroom. I treat them with kindness and respect. Nothing about my personal life changes that. But if you feel I need to take a leave of absence, I understand. I won't fight it." She sat down, heart pounding. Owen stood immediately. "Sarah has my full support, both as her physician and as someone who cares deeply about her." He paused. "We're together now. We're building a life as a family, and I'll be there for both Sarah and her baby." The room erupted in murmurs. Mrs. Holloway looked shocked. Dorothy's carefully blank expression finally cracked, showing something that might have been surprise or might have been pain. Reverend Matthews raised his hand for silence. "Dr. Hartley, are you claiming to be this child's father?" "I'm saying I'll be this child's father in every way that matters," Owen said carefully. "Biology isn't everything. Family is about choice, about commitment." Sarah's eyes burned with tears. He was protecting her even now, threading the needle between truth and lie, giving her a way forward that might preserve what was left of her reputation. The board members looked at each other, having a silent conversation. Finally, Mrs. Holloway spoke. "Sarah, I think a temporary leave would be appropriate, until after the baby is born, with full pay through the end of the semester, and we can revisit your position in the spring." It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't condemnation either. Sarah nodded, accepting the compromise. But then Dorothy stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need to say something." Dorothy's voice shook. "I've spent the last 24 hours praying and thinking. About my son, about Sarah, about what Daniel would want." She looked directly at Sarah. "I was angry. I still am, if I'm being honest. But I've also been holding Sarah to impossible standards because of my own grief. Because keeping her frozen as Daniel's widow meant I didn't have to fully accept that he's gone." Sarah felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Daniel loved you," Dorothy continued. "And if he were here, he'd want you to be happy. He'd want you to live, not just exist." She turned to the board. "Dr. Hartley is a good man. If he's choosing to stand by Sarah, then maybe we should trust that choice, instead of tearing them down for it." Reverend Matthews studied both women for a long moment. "The board will take Mrs. Brennan's statement into consideration. Sarah, you'll take a leave of absence with pay through December. We'll revisit in January." He looked at Owen. "Dr. Hartley, we expect you to maintain appropriate professional boundaries going forward." "Of course." Owen's hand remained firmly clasped with Sarah's. As they left the church, Dorothy caught up with them in the parking lot. "Sarah, about the house." "It's okay," Sarah said quietly. "I understand. It's family property." "No." Dorothy shook her head. "I spoke with Marcus and Linda before this meeting. We're not evicting you. The house is yours to stay in as long as you need it, rent-free." She managed a small smile. "Consider it a gift for my future grandchild. Blood or not, this baby will be a Brennan if you're raising it." Sarah couldn't speak. She simply stepped forward and hugged Dorothy, feeling the older woman's arms come around her hesitantly, then tighter. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in Owen's kitchen, their kitchen now, watching snow fall past the window. She'd moved most of her things from the farmhouse, though Dorothy had insisted she keep it available. "For when you need space," she'd said. Or when the baby comes and you need somewhere quiet. The town had talked, of course. Some with kindness, others with judgment. But Sarah discovered something surprising. She didn't care as much as she'd thought she would. The people who mattered, her students' parents, her real friends, Dorothy and the Brennan family, had chosen to support her. The rest were just noise. Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his hands resting on her now obvious belly. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was thinking about how terrified I was 3 months ago. How certain I was that the truth would destroy everything." She turned in his arms. "And how wrong I was about what actually matters." "Any regrets?" Sarah pretended to consider. "Well, your taste in furniture is questionable, and you leave wet towels on the bathroom floor." Owen laughed. "I'll work on it." She grew serious. "No regrets, not about any of it. Even the hard parts brought me here." She kissed him softly. "Thank you. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For staying when I gave you every reason to leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Owen promised. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah opened it to find a man standing on the porch. Mid-30s, nervous, holding flowers. Her heart stopped. "Sarah." Nathan, that was his name, she remembered now, gave her an uncertain smile. "I'm sorry to show up like this. I've been trying to find you for 2 months. When I finally tracked you down and heard about..." He gestured helplessly at her stomach. "Is it mine?" Sarah felt Owen come to stand beside her, solid and steady. "Yes," she said quietly. "But Nathan, I need you to understand something." That night in Des Moines was just one night. "You don't owe me anything. You don't need to." "I want to." Nathan's words tumbled out. "That night changed me, Sarah. I've thought about you every day since. When I found out about the baby, I knew I had to come. I want to be part of this, if you'll let me. I want to be there for you and our child." Sarah looked at this man, kind-faced, earnest, offering her a different kind of future. The biological father, stepping up, doing the right thing. 6 months ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. It was the safe choice, the respectable choice. But standing there with Owen's hand in hers, Sarah realized she didn't want safe anymore. She wanted real. "I appreciate you coming," Sarah said gently. "And I won't keep you from your child. If you want to be involved, we can figure that out. But Nathan, I'm with Owen now. We're building a life together, and he's going to be this baby's father in every way that matters." Nathan's face fell, but he nodded slowly. "I understand. I'm too late." He pulled a card from his pocket. "My number. For when the baby comes, or if you need anything. Financial support, medical bills, whatever you need." After he left, Sarah closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. Owen watched her carefully. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Nathan seems like a decent guy. He's offering you legitimacy, financial security." "I don't want legitimacy," Sarah interrupted. "I want you. I want this life we're building, messy and complicated as it is." She moved into his arms. "You chose me when you didn't have to. You stood by me when everyone was watching. That means everything." Owen kissed her forehead. "No regrets?" "Not a single one." 6 months later, on a warm April evening, Sarah stood in Millbrook's town square for the annual spring festival. The square had been transformed with twinkling lights and vendor booths, and the air smelled like cotton candy and grilled corn. She pushed a stroller containing 3-month-old Emma Grace, named for Sarah's sister and born with a full head of dark hair and Owen's patient temperament. Dorothy appeared with a gift bag. I made her a blanket. Blue because heaven knows she has enough pink. She leaned over the stroller, cooing. "Hello, beautiful girl. Grandma Dorothy brought you something." Sarah smiled, watching them. Nathan had kept his word, sending support checks and calling monthly to hear updates. He'd visited once when Emma was born, holding his daughter with tears in his eyes and thanking Owen for being there in ways he couldn't be. It wasn't a traditional family, but it worked. Owen appeared with 2 lemonades and a funnel cake to share. "Your former students are running the ring toss booth. They've been asking for you. I'll stop by." Sarah had returned to teaching in January, and the school had welcomed her back with open arms. Some parents had requested different classrooms for their children, but most had stayed. Her class was as full and chaotic as ever. As they walked through the festival, Sarah noticed people watching them, some with curiosity, others with warmth. Mrs. Patterson waved from her booth. Reverend Matthews nodded in greeting. The town had absorbed their story and moved on, as small towns eventually do. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, bouncing Emma gently as she began to fuss. Sarah looked around at the community that had judged her and forgiven her, at the family she'd chosen and the one that had chosen her back. "I'm thinking about how scared I was that day in your clinic. How certain I was that the truth would destroy me. And now? Now I know that the truth didn't destroy me. It freed me." She took Owen's hand. "From trying to be perfect, from living for other people's approval, from believing I had to carry everything alone." Owen pulled her close, careful not to jostle the baby. "I love you, both of you. We love you too." As the sun set over Millbrook, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah Hartley, no longer Brennan, no longer just a widow, but fully herself, watched her daughter sleep peacefully. The path here hadn't been easy, but standing in the golden light with her chosen family around her, Sarah knew every difficult step had been worth it. Sometimes the truth breaks you open, But if you're lucky, and if you're brave enough to let people in, it also lets the light shine through.